Where do you want to start?
Let's start at the beginning.
What does foundation mean to you as an artist and a person?
Foundation really means like being able to stand on that solid rock no matter what comes in life. I've always been told that, like, if you build the foundation right, you can build to the sky and even beyond. But if you build it wrong, it's like everything collapses. So I think number one is that you have to definitely understand who you are as a person, because life will come and will test that foundation on who you say you are. I think even more importantly, not just knowing who you are as a person, but knowing who you are in Christ would definitely be number two. Um, and then number three is just knowing where you're not called to go, like being solid and okay with, you know, hey, God may not be leading me there or leading me to meet with this person or to link up here or, being solid. And I don't think you can get to number three without really understanding number one and two really well, and as you elevate in life, like that will carry you through the rest of your entire life.
And what would you say, what was the lesson from your past that still guides your decisions in life today?
Wow. I mean, I would say just knowing that everything that happens in your life is not by accident. One of my favorite scriptures in the Bible talks about how, the steps of the saints are ordered, and I think you have to really be able to identify whether or not you're truly a saint in Christ. That doesn't mean to be perfect, but that just means like your heart's in the right place and you're really focused on the will that God has for your life. And so for me, it was like all those journeys and those steps to get us to where we are right now. I've just kind of learned as we went,
Yeah.
like you didn't always do it right. You didn't always, make the most of your opportunity, the most of your time, but that was still for a purpose and a reason to kind of prepare you for where we are at this point for sure. So
So do you feel like that was from your upbringing with your family and just tying into everything with your music and the foundation all around?
yeah, 100%. Like, I feel like in the very beginning, like I was trying to kind of find, like everyone does, I was trying to find who I was. And I was trying different things like the partying and the, turning up and all that stuff. And then eventually I just kind of hit rock bottom, and I think that's when like a lot of people probably find Christ, right? Is like it's almost like starting over from the beginning and you just start developing that understanding of who Christ is. And once I found out who Christ was really and got that solid, then I found myself. But for me, it was always about like the ministry and the music. I feel like the two of them kind of always went hand in hand. Like my mom used to sing like worship songs in the car all the time, and my grandparents led worship at church. My dad used to bump like Smokey Norfolk, like in the whip when we drive from like West Palm to Miami to go to school. So it's like I just grew up, in the church and being surrounded around music. My uncle, who used to do music like secularly, was big at his time coming up, and he was the only person in the family that we really looked to as like an artist. And unfortunately, he got caught up in some bad stuff and ended up going to prison. And so I always felt like that chip on my shoulder to like carry that torch musically for the family. And so I think that's kind of carried me foundationally to where we are right now for sure.
And how do you differentiate God's voice from your own since you always bring God up in this and that is such a pivotal part of your journey?
Yeah.
How would you describe to people that?
Man, so really quick story that kind of answers that question, very honest, is that I remember being like 6 years old. This is the first time I ever heard the voice of God or even came to Christ. Was like I was at church and my dad was like, a military dad. Like if he told you to stay still, like you didn't move. And I remember we were at this church service and he got up to go give his life to Christ. And I was sitting there just watching everything in church. And I remember hearing the voice of God straight up tell me, like, get up and go to the altar. And like my voice would be like, absolutely not. Like your dad just told you to stay still. You don't move. But it was like, I knew the voice of God was calling me to go up there. And so I remember going up there and I stood right next to my dad. And the way my dad tells the story is that he looked down at me and was like about to lose his mind because it's such a serious thing, you know? It's like, it's not time for kids to play around and like, why are you up here? And he said that he heard God confirm, like, I am the one who sent him up here. And from that day on, I feel like my whole life has just been a journey about following Christ and getting to know him more and getting to know God more. And so that's really like my answer for that is like, I just think you know because God will confirm it. You know, it's not something you have to really think too hard about. You just got to be obedient and move in what he tells you to do, and his word will confirm it as you go.
What about those people that don't know how to differentiate those voices? What advice would you give them?
I'd say know your word, right?
Amen.
God
Most
says that my
definitely.
people shall know, my sheep shall know my voice. You got to know his word in order to know when you're seeing things in your life, you know, is this truly coming of God? And a good test to do that, I think, and all that we're doing with the music, with everything, relationships that we build along the way is like, is this what I'm about to do glorifying God? Right? Is this relationship, this partnership, this whatever we're doing, is this going to glorify and magnify the kingdom? If it's not, it can't be of God.